Welcome to this special Concord and Victory interview. Today we are exploring the different routes into the police and fire services and how these vital professions are evolving in a changing world. We are delighted to welcome Rachel Packman and Neil Goosey from Northamptonshire Police. Both work within the Positive Action Team, which leads outreach and recruitment for the police and Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service. Packman serves in community engagement and positive action across the country while promoting equality, diversity, and inclusion in recruitment. Together, they help people from all backgrounds explore pathways into the emergency services. They will outline the main entry routes into the police, including the Police Constable Degree Apprenticeship, Degree Holder Entry Programme, Pre-Joint Professional Policing Degree, and the Police Constable Entry Programme, now used by some forces including Northamptonshire. They will also discuss the many non-officer roles in policing, such as police staff investigators, PCSOs, and digital and data roles, and explain how police and fire services increasingly collaborate under shared governance in Northamptonshire. Rachel and Neil, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Could you please begin by introducing yourselves a bit more to us?
I think that was a lovely introduction, thank you. I've worked in policing since the early 90s. So I was a detective constable, and then I retired and have returned to join the Positive Action Team alongside Neil.
I've known Rachel for a very long time. So I emerged in Northamptonshire in 1990 and have stayed in this organisation ever since and have had lots of different roles. My most memorable one, for me, not for other people necessarily, was I was the secretary of the Police Federation for 13 years, which is looking after police officers who are delivering extraordinary work every single day of their working lives. And that was a real honour to represent those talented, skillful people.
So, a question for Rachel. What are the main differences between the Police Constable Degree Apprenticeships and the Degree Holder Entry Programme in terms of training and career development?
So at the moment, the pathways have slightly changed. We don't have a degree holder entry anymore. We have the apprenticeship, we have the Police Constable Entry Programme. So the differences are the apprentice is a 3-year programme. Someone will join, they can join from 18 years of age. They're a police officer from day one, and they'll do a 3-year degree alongside delivering practical policing. So they'll do it in blocks of time and ultimately obtain a degree, which is a BA Honours in professional policing, which we use Northampton Uni for. The Police Constable Entry Programme is a 2-year programme. So without the degree side of it.
Thank you.
For those considering university first, how does the pre-joint professional policing degree work, and do graduates of this route have any particular advantages when applying?
We were just discussing this actually, but we would encourage, if somebody wanted to do a degree first, then obviously that's their choice, and that will build their life skills and their experience, and they'll bring that experience into policing, so it will always be of a benefit. But in terms of coming into policing is very transparent. Everybody starts on the same pay, goes up in the same way incrementally, and has the same opportunities. So no matter what your experience coming into it, your age, your background, the opportunities are the same.
So, a question for Neil. At Stowe, we have pupils from many different countries. So, could you please explain the eligibility requirements for joining the police force, particularly in terms of nationality or residence? Are there routes for international students who later become UK citizens or hold a settled status?
Okay, brilliant. And this is a really important question. The eligibility to be a police officer. And I'll give a really detailed answer for this. So to answer your question directly, the requirement to be a police officer in terms of nationality and background is you have to be a British citizen, an EU citizen, or an individual who has been granted indefinite leave to remain by the Home Office. And if you listen to the news, that is a moving landscape. Currently, and I think it will be for a few years to come yet. The other bit that goes alongside of that is to be a police officer or police employee, you have to have been resident in this country for the last 3 years. So those elements are national requirements. They're set by the national body that governs policing. So there's no local nuances around this. This is the national standard. So EU, UK citizen or indefinite leave to remain and having been here for 3 years. Slight exception to that is if you go to the military and you're deployed overseas for 8 months, that is still seen as having been residing in this country for 3 years. The other bits of eligibility, which are really important that people understand, again, these are national requirements, they're not locally set. You must have maths and English at level 2 GCSE, must be passes. You must have 2 A-levels minimum or a level 3 NVQ, which is the higher level, not the lower level of NVQ. And you need to have a UK driver's licence to drive a manual vehicle at the point you join us, not at the point that you apply to join us. And they're the principal eligibility criteria to be a police officer.
For pupils still at school, are there volunteering opportunities that they can take part in?
Right. In policing, yes.
Yeah.
What I would say is for any of your students, any volunteering anywhere is an immensely valuable thing for them to do. So your school will be working tirelessly hard to educate you. And as part of that education, they will be creating a social being as well. What working in the voluntary sector will do will be to turbocharge the development of you as a whole person. And this is the thing about, I don't think necessarily just public service, but I think this will apply wider than public service. Your academic qualifications will open the door for you. Coming to this school will open a door for you. What gets you through that door is the whole person that you are. And voluntary work, whether that's in policing, whether that's St John's Ambulance, whether that's in a local church, it doesn't really matter. That creates an incredible human being with lots of skills that are transferable into a workplace post-school. So we would always encourage anyone to, as part of their education, to do something voluntary or even paid work will do exactly the same. Just about creating additional skills which complement exactly what this school is giving you.
So a question for Rachel. Does volunteering or part-time experiences improve an applicant's chances of success when applying for full-time graduate roles?
Yes, absolutely, for any of the pathways, I think, because some of those core skills, if you think about policing, if you think about why people pick up the phone every day and make that call of service to our control room, people don't, well, sometimes they do, but generally they don't phone the police unless something has gone wrong. So there's a problem-solving scenario. So if somebody has those experiences that Neil's just spoken to, it will give them examples of how they've solved problems. It might give them examples of how they've worked on a team. It might give them an example of how they've juggled different priorities or even dealt with a conflict. Because even in any scenario, conflict's not just about physical conflict, it's about, verbal discussions sometimes with someone. So if people gather those skills, whether it be from a part-time job or a volunteering opportunity or being, I don't know, the captain of a sports team or a society, then yes, it'll improve your chances of being successful on one of those pathways. And in any job scenario, you know, we talk to people about the skills that they're going to need. Part of our role is that we do, Neil does inputs for candidates coming in. We do mock interviews with people, and we're not trying to put words into people's mouths. We're just trying to draw out of them the assets they have, and those volunteering or those things they've done will give them lots of evidence of their skills.
Could you both please tell us a bit about your time in the workforce of policing and fire and rescue service, and could you please tell us why you would recommend it?
Go on, you go first.
Why would I'll start with why I would recommend it, I think. So, look, policing is relatively unique because we talk about entering people's lives. Policing enters other people's lives at their lowest point, their point of greatest need. Whether they're a victim of crime, a witness to crime, or an offender, we enter people's lives. That is a hugely cherished thing to do. And if you think about entering somebody's lives, you'll do one of two things. You'll either do something for the good, or you'll do something that makes things 100 times worse. 99.9% of police officers put their uniform on to do good. When they enter somebody's life, they do that to do good. And I'll tell you that, the rewards you get from policing and doing good for other people is phenomenal. How do I do good for a criminal who's going to get arrested? That's entering somebody's life. Well, hopefully, we deal with them with dignity, courtesy and respect to get the best evidence that we can to tell the truth about what has happened. Whether that determines somebody who we think is guilty or not guilty, we do our best to achieve the best for the benefit of all. It's a really cherished thing to do. And I hadn't thought about that as a principle until 35 years after first joining this organisation. If I'd have thought about that before, I think the way I crafted my journey through the organisation might have been a different journey. But I would like to think in the various roles that I've had, a lot public facing, a lot dealing with the public, a lot not dealing with the public face to face, dealing with police officers and representing their needs was a completely different kettle of fish. But all with a simple principle of putting people first, dealing with compassion and kindness. And I think if you've got individuals who can be compassionate and kind, who understand, appreciate the law and deal with that law with absolute integrity, I think they're pretty good bedrocks to be an incredibly good police. I'm not saying I was a very good one, but I'm just saying that I think they're the bedrock of being an incredibly good police officer.
I think for me, it is a privilege. It's a strange thing to try and explain, because you're going to put yourself in situations where most people would not thank you for. So I did loads of different roles, but for example, I was a medic with our riot unit. So going out to the worst public order situations. And you know, sometimes you're behind a shield. Sometimes I've been petrol bombed. I've been all sorts of things. But you know, you see things in life that other people don't get to see. And then I moved on to being a detective, and I did things like family liaison for murder inquiries. So my role would be the link to the family from the senior investigating officer. So you would have to go out to the family and talk to them about, you might have to tell them that the defence had the right to have a second post-mortem on their loved one. You might have to tell them that they can't get their property back when when that property is the most precious thing to them. You might have to tell them that actually it's not advisable to see their loved one because they're in such a horrendous state, we don't want them to see them. Or that something is going to hit the press. You know, there was times when I've sat outside a house numerous times thinking, I don't want to go in and tell them this because you know the impact it's going to have. So it's not an easy thing, but it's a privilege because other people don't get to do that. And the important thing is that you know that you've done it in the best way possible to try and make it as easy as it could be. So you know that you've done your best. So it's strange. It's a strange scenario, isn't it, to want to do that, but you do, for whatever reason.
So in Northamptonshire, the police and fire services share governance under the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner. What benefits have you seen from this collaboration?
I think it's focused our attention to work more collaboratively. Literally yesterday we had a school come to visit at the police station, and we did that in conjunction with the fire station that sits next to one of the police stations. So 20 Year 11 students came in and they had an input of the fire station and the police station. So I think it's encouraged us to do things like that and work together, which in the past we've maybe been a bit more separate as organisations, haven't we?
Yeah, so the two organisations have two completely different roles as a prime function. But what that joint working does is it enables and it eases bits of similarity to come together. So like major event planning, fire service have a major event planning, police have a major event planning. But the core of that is the same, that they're there to keep the public as safe as they possibly can. So that is a simple fit that comes together, and that enables all of that work to happen in a much easier, more fluid and fluent way. And you may have noticed that the fire service don't put lots of fires out anymore. And the reason why they don't do that is because the corporate world has got better at making things safer, and the fire service do more work about public safety. Or the police do public safety too. We do it from a crime perspective, they do it from a fire safety perspective. But those principles are pretty much the same. So to have the same sort of governance that oversees all of that, and we all work to the same sort of plan around how we engage with our communities. And this really comes to the work that Rachel and I do about engaging communities and speaking to communities about opportunities in both those services. It becomes more of an enabling function. And the truth is that in the 30 odd years that Rachel and I have been around the organisation, whilst we haven't worked necessarily jointly, we've worked in sympathy and understanding of each other. But now it's just more of probably a closer relationship between the two organisations. And I'm not saying that was a marriage made in heaven. There've been temper tantrums as that has worked its way through. But now we've gone through that initial jerkiness. It's working in a real smooth sort of way.
Beyond becoming a police officer, what other careers exist within policing, such as investigative, digital, or operational support roles?
Yes, there's lots of things. So we employ police community support officers that you mentioned that work on neighbourhood teams supporting policing, so on a smaller geographical area and real problem solvers on a community basis. Our force control room have lots of call operatives because that's where all of our calls of service go into, and then are triaged out depending on where they're happening and the urgency of what they're happening. We have police investigators now that are not police officers that are supporting teams. And then we have everything that any big business has. So we have HR, people that look after our people, people who look after the money, people who look after all of our IT and security systems. And then, you know, we cover the whole county. So those people that look after our buildings and our fleet of vehicles. So it's complex, isn't it?
It is, and the really nice thing is if you or your students, your fellow students, your peers are not interested in putting out fires or not interested in rolling around with difficult people or dealing with the drama and excitement that goes with policing or the challenges that go with policing, but want to make a valuable contribution to keeping our communities safe and keeping them safe against those people who want to cause the most harm, they can do that. And in simple terms, if you take away some or all of those police staff roles that exist in policing, that exist in the fire service, those services can't survive. So those roles are not just working in admin, working in managing our fleet. They're critical to delivering the service that we need to deliver to the public in a timely and efficient and effective way.
So for someone interested in studying law or criminology, are there specific roles within the police that might complement those interests?
Anything, I think, is my honest answer. But so criminology is a bedfellow of policing. Criminology is in part the study of policing. Law is a product, or policing is a product of law. And those two are complementary. If you're a criminal lawyer, I know you want to be a lawyer, Tia. If you're a criminal lawyer, we generate the business for you, right? Because we bring people into custody and then they're entitled to due process, quite rightly so too, and the lawyers have that part to play. But let's turn it around. You don't need criminology or law to be an effective police officer. What you need to be an effective police officer is kindness, compassion, understanding, the ability to make sense out of what is going on around you and make a decision. You may make the wrong decision. Some police officers do, but they don't deliberately make a wrong decision. They make it on the basis of what they know at the time. And we're very good at analysing that when we know all of the facts. So if you can work under that kind of pressure, that's more important than whether you've studied criminology or whether you've studied law. It's that whole person that I talked about earlier that is we're more interested in the whole of the person than we are in the academic world. So I don't want people to think they have to be typecast in this mould to be a police officer.
What advice would you give to a young person considering a career in policing or fire service, but who is still unsure which path to take?
I think we always say keep your options open. So consider, because we see people coming through into policing, and some people come into it in different pathways, and sometimes people have really set ideas that they want to ultimately be a detective, or they want to do this, or they want to do that. And I think sometimes what you think you want to do might not end up being what you want to do, because you change your mind. So remain open-minded to different opportunities, and things will take twists and turns. So just grab any opportunities that come along, but remain open-minded.
And I'll just add to that of goes back to the point we made earlier. Do things outside of schooling that are relevant. And when you do things outside of schooling and do things inside of schooling, look at how that is relevant to being a firefighter, to being a police officer, to being a community support officer, to being whatever you want to be. Make those links. So, for example, we very often talk to young people who say, I just work at McDonald's or I just work in Wetherspoons. They don't just do anything. What they do when they work in McDonald's or Wetherspoons or in a voluntary sector, doesn't matter. They're developing skills that are transferable into the organisation. So think about what you have done that is relevant. Bearing in mind we want police officers who can think critically, who can understand what's going on that I've already said before. Making those connections is absolutely critical.
You're developing those skills doing the interview tonight. You know, you all the time you grow. We talk to people all the time about learning and consider, reflecting. It's really important that we have that mindset that somebody, whatever you do in life, that you think, okay, that went well, I did that really well, but actually next time I could do that. No matter what you do in policing or in fire or in any occupation, if you do that, you will grow as a person and you'll be better at your profession. So we encourage that.
100%. And the second thing that I would say, and this applies to anybody wanting to do anything, is understand that world. So the point I'm making here is, you didn't wake up one morning and say, I think I'll be a lawyer. You go on a journey to get you to where you want to be. And part of that journey is about understanding the profession that you want to go into. So if you go on a journey that takes you down the path of becoming a police officer, understand what being a police officer is, the good bits of it, the less good bits of it, the bits that are going to frustrate you, the bits that are going to challenge you, how policing will develop you. If you can think about all of those things, then what that says to an employer is, yeah, they haven't just dreamt this. They haven't just kind of like taken a punt at becoming this. They've thought it through in a really logical way. And we talk about the journey that people go on to become a police officer.
We encourage as well people to look at the world as well, because what's happening in our county, but it is reflected in, the world is quite a small place now. Communication happens very fast, social media, with the news, we know what is happening nationally, globally, very quickly, but things impact here. Northamptonshire isn't a massive community, but we have a Jewish community that have a synagogue in Northampton. We have a Russian community, we have a Ukrainian community. We have people, so things that are happening globally that might seem quite detached from the world we're in, it's impacting families and individuals right now. So it's making people have that overview of the world. So it's good if people look outside their own, what's happening to them right now.
Lastly, are there any other questions?
Yeah, just a few. What made you both want to join the police, and would you say that it's like what you expected?
Good question.
For me, straight from university, I did a brief familiarisation. At the time, the force were opening up a familiarisation, and I just came along and loved it. It wasn't something that I'd thought about previously, believe it or not, but I loved it. I think it was just, I love working with people. I like being part of a team, and policing is always going to be in teams. And I just love the variety and the interest and that sort of knowing stuff. Maybe I'm a bit nosy.
Okay, and I think it's fair to say I didn't follow the advice that I give people now. I tripped into policing So I studied in Yorkshire and wanted to stay in Yorkshire. And in my naivety, when I stayed there, all my friends left because they were my peer group and they all went all over the country to work. So I knew nobody. And to get to know new people, I became a special constable, which is a volunteer police officer. And then I fell in love with this world of chaos, excitement, challenge, being scared, and all of those emotions that go with being a police officer. And that was my journey into policing, and here I am, still here, still talking about it, and still really passionate about it. Even with how policing has changed, even with all the bad news that we hear about policing, Rachel and I still talk about it with absolute passion, because at the core are people, and at the core are people very often at a time of absolute need. Cherished thing to do.
And just one more is that there are so many different services in the UK, like one in every county or something. And so how did you choose which force you wanted to join?
Okay. So there are 43 Home Office funded forces in England and Wales. Scotland has its own arrangements, Police Scotland. Northern Ireland has its own arrangements, that's the Police Service of Northern Ireland. So that's 43, 44, 45. There's the British Transport Police, that polices the infrastructure of our rail network. I'm losing count already. There's the Civil Nuclear Constabulary that polices our civil nuclear contingent. They're permanently armed. They keep our nuclear facilities safe. And on they go. There are lots of different police organisations. His Majesty the King has a police service keeping his parks safe, believe it or not. So you can take policing anywhere. What brought me to Northamptonshire was my desire to be back where my roots are, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. We tell people to think deeper about why you want to go to a particular force, because every force is different. So what makes you want to go to police where you want to go to police? And we really, really ask people to think long and hard about that. My reason, I don't think is a particularly good reason, because I want to come home. I don't think it's a compelling reason to come to Northamptonshire.
Yeah, it is an important question. We ask people to sort of dig deep, because we want to know that if somebody applies for Northamptonshire Police, there's something, there's a good reason for that. Because exactly as you've reflected, there is lots of forces. So why? So we would ask people why here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel and Neil, for sharing your experience and insights. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.